with that, John, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, my friend.
It's going to be a pleasure working with you.
Good to see you.
All right, yeah, you know, we may need a chief of staff there too. You never know.
So the local community was introduced to the concept of tolling during the CRC's initial discussion.
Right.
Because they were proposing, the price tag kept changing, but ultimately it was a $3.5 billion project that they looked at the two states, each kicking in $450 million, total $900 million. They were going to get around $850 million from the feds to pay for the light rail portion of it, and then there was the rest of that check. What the plan ultimately was to borrow that money, but then how do you pay the borrowed money back? Well, that's where they came to you, me, and our fellow citizens, and they were going to have tolls, and that was a huge part of why the CRC got killed. They were looking at the time potentially $8 each way, $2,000 a year out of the pockets of the average citizen crossing the Interstate 5 bridge to help pay for borrowed money. And there's a whole host of things we can get into, buddy, but that's how we got started on tolls a decade ago with the CRC.
Now, what about the proposal to date? So, what's out there that's getting ready to be, well, we've been told, if you will, that we're gonna need some bridging, some communication. We're going to have to resolve this still. But then the impact it is having on communities and things of that nature, the toll piece and whatever, why don't you share that with us a little bit? What's being proposed, you think?
You bet. So the Oregon State Legislature in 2017 debated a transportation bill. How do we fix our roads, new bridges, expand highways, do all the things around the state? And ultimately, they have to come up with the money to pay for it. So they raise the gas tax, they raise your car registration fee, et cetera, et cetera. Well, somebody late in the game threw in the idea, why don't we study tolling? Now, none of the money from the study of tolls was going to be used for any of the projects that they talked about in that legislation in 2017. But the legislatures just said, we want ODOT to study tolls. So for a year, they put together a policy committee, a lot of things in the press that studied the concept. Is this equitable? Is it going to affect the poorest people the most? Of course, who can't afford it? What will happen? One of the most stunning things that jumped out at me when they were discussing it was that presently we don't have enough freeway and highway capacity in the region, and therefore 80,000 vehicles are diverting onto side roads today before we do a single thing. Well, they were talking about the toll they didn't use the word punish, but that's what it was. It was a negative incentive that would force people off the freeways to improve traffic congestion. Well, the ODOT staff and their consultants said if they tolled I-5 and I-205 from the border with Washington down to where they meet near Wilsonville, an additional 50,000 vehicles would divert onto side roads. That's into our neighborhoods, near our schools, small businesses, communities. They're already a mess. We all know that. We live it every day. But can you imagine 130,000 vehicles? And it just phenomenal, number one. Number two was this is just the test, tolling I-5 and I-205. If that works out how they hope, they then want to move forward, look at tolling I-84, I-405, 26, all the major highways in the region, which of course would cause even more diversion, not to mention additional negative impact for the average citizen, the single mom, the single dad trying to deal with kids, hitting their pocketbook, huge financial issues there.
Where are they having those kinds of discussions?
Well, and so they had for about a year this policy advisory committee, and they had 25 members of it, 3 from Southwest Washington, and then a host from all 3 counties here in the Portland metro area. There were government officials on it. There were elected leaders from different county councils and whatnot. And they met, heard input, and ultimately they made a proposal that then went to the Oregon Transportation Commission. So then the Oregon Transportation Commission held hearings, and at the end of last year, they submitted a proposal to the federal government to begin the test and the implementation of tolling on I-5 and I-205. What their initial proposal is only to toll a small part of I-5, basically on the south end from Multnomah Boulevard, on the south end up to Going Street in North Portland, and then on I-205 it was going to be from the Abernathy Bridge area out to about Stafford Road, and they want to do the test there and see if they can learn from all of that. But the ultimate goal is to toll all of I-5 and I-205 and then expand it to all the major area highways.
Wow, wow. You know, as we're talking about this locally, sometimes I'll go in other areas. For instance, I'd be interested in, is there a tolling issue in the Seattle area or other areas that you might have had some background on in terms of its impact on the citizens?
It was an amazing thing that you mentioned that, my friend. So these consultants were sharing with the 25-member PAC committee members, as well as the general public, different scenarios, where's there been tolling around the country. And they would introduce little snippets of truth, but they would often leave a lot of it out. And so they talked about I-405 in the Seattle area. Just like we have a bypass I-405 here, they've got one that's, think of us in the Portland area, I-205. That's I-405 in Seattle.
Okay.
It's their major bypass to the east of I-5. And it serves a lot of communities, multiple counties up there. What they failed to tell, they says, oh, it's wonderful and we're doing all of these great things. Well, it's wonderful if you can afford to pay the $10 each way that the max toll is up there. And it's not always tolling at $10. It could be $2, $1.50, $3. But they said this is wonderful. What they didn't tell you was what was the impact on the other lanes of traffic. In fact, another aspect of them selling this is that the ODOT proposal is to build no new lanes for cars, trucks, anything. And the federal government says you're only allowed to toll interstates if you build something new. A new lane, a new bridge, a new freeway, or if you're replacing something like replacing the interstate bridge or something else. But so generally, no, you can't do that. Well, in Seattle, they promised the citizens they would build a new general purpose lane on I-405 if the people voted for the tolls. The people says, yes, we're congested, we need this, and they voted for it. And roughly 6 to 9 months before they started the tolls, they said, oh, this is not a general purpose lane for everybody to use. This is only for HOV and people willing to pay it. So it was a bait and switch.
Wow.
And the staff didn't share that with the Portland community or with the PAC committee. Hearing all that, they kind of left that out. Ultimately, what do we know today as a result of the tolls on I-405 in Seattle? Number one, the travel times for everybody else, the average general purpose traveler that's going to or from work or whatnot, have gotten worse. They haven't sped up. The people collecting the tolls are making bank on it. Last year, for the I-405, 43 cents out of every tolling dollar collected went to the cost of collecting it. That's
43
absolutely
cents.
43 cents. Now,
Jesus Christ.
you and your wife own a small business.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a small business person taking a credit card that the credit card company gets 43 cents out of every dollar you collect.
There's no way.
There's no way you'd make business. You couldn't keep the doors open in your business. It's just outrageous. And compare that with the gas tax. None of us like paying taxes, but if we're going to pay taxes, we would like it to be efficient use of our money. To collect gas taxes, it costs less than 1%. So common sense to me says, what would you rather have? A 1% cost of collection for gas taxes or 43 cents on the dollar for tolling? And while that's high, nationally, you will see figures 25, 30, 35, 40 cents on the dollar as the cost of collecting tolls. It's hugely inefficient. And if you're going to pick the people's pocket,
Right.
Do it in an efficient way. Use the money in a smart way. And that was not briefed by this policy advisory committee.
When you think of policy advice, now is that the governor or is that the mayor or what?
So,
in the Seattle area.
Well, so the PAC, the Policy Advisory Committee, was created by ODOT here,
ODOT here.
to discuss the tolling.
Okay.
And so you had various county commissioners, Washington County, Multnomah County, Clackamas County. We had a couple people from Clark County, Southwest Washington on it, different people, government bodies, ODOT, WashDOT, et cetera there, Metro, City of Portland, TriMet had a member on it. So it was a combination of elected officials and then government officials who sat at that table.
But both governors were chairing basically that
well, the governors weren't, but it was created by ODOT. And so the ODOT regional director controlled all of this, had the meetings, and held it, as well as ODOT was the one that decided which independent contractors, i.e. experts, do they want to hire to act as consultants to this policy advisory committee.
Not that we're going to get in that subject, but it sounds familiar when I started thinking about Evans and Associates. Remember that one?
Oh, David Evans and Associates.
He was kind of like the chair for the CRC, that bridge at the time, right?
Absolutely. And there's another challenge citizens face. Why was the CRC killed?
Yes.
A whole host of things. People were concerned about the tolls, $2,000 a year. There was light rail. A lot of people in Vancouver and Southwest Washington didn't feel we had the need for light rail. But ultimately, it was an unbelievable boondoggle. It was supposed to be a $50 million maximum contract that David Evans and Associates took control of to manage. At the end of the day, they spent over $200 million. Now, how on earth can you have a $50 million maximum contract and it suddenly magically ballooned to over $200 million of our money? And that leads into why are they discussing the resurrection of the Columbia River crossing today?
Yes.
Because both Oregon and Washington accepted federal money to help fund that $200 million and change. Well, the federal government's saying, you didn't build anything. You have a certain amount of time, and then you got to start paying us back. Because you took our money to build transportation infrastructure, you built nothing, so start paying back. So both the Oregon and the Washington legislature are saying, hey, we got to re-engage. And by the way, they just submitted to the federal government a request to delay when the final deadline is that they have to start paying that back. No, we're going to build something. Trust us.
Wow.
And so that, in a significant way, is part of what's driving the renewed discussions on replacing the interstate bridge.
You know, when you make that kind of a statement, especially the things that are affecting the taxpayer aspect of it, you would think, well, who do I go to check this out? Who do I go to get this message, if you will, to know exactly how I should feel about this and the impact it's having on me personally, because I've got bills and whatever. And again, we've sort of like set that aside from our elected leadership. The leaders are supposed to be the ones that we've elected to be our communicator, if you will, and looking out for our.
Absolutely.
But unfortunately, for some strange reason, it's like a group. They're just sitting there and they're doing their own thing, and everybody's getting paid.
Yes.
Everybody's getting paid. Money's from the taxpayer aspect of it, and we know nothing and we get nothing. Fair?
Absolutely right.
So like I said, we've got governors, we've got congressmen, we've got local officials, like you said, in that aspect of it, and that's why it's so important, especially this round. You've got to ask these folks who are asking to be their leaders, if you will, in respect of it. Almost like myself as a mayor aspect of it. You got to ask these other folks, well, what are you going to do about this? How much did you know about this? In fact, like the existing mayor, for instance, the existing Mayor Wheeler, he had to have had some background on this piece. The guy's been around. He's even handled the monies in the state as a treasurer. He handled the county as a chair. You know what I mean? And then that's he's sitting up here at the mayor aspect of it. But you don't get that information. That's one of the reasons why I'm running right now. And we got to get the word out to the people. Now he may change right in the middle of the stream.
Yeah.
He may, because he's been invited to, because he's running for mayor. He has every right to come here and share basically what he's going to do. You know, he's got the advantage to a certain degree with reference to the media because he's the city mayor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the little people who are running don't have that access. But they do have it at the Oregon Voters Digest, sitting right here, right in front of Bruce, just like I'm doing with my buddy. Right?
Absolutely.
But still, but again, getting back to that, let's go back a little bit more about the tolling aspect of it and the impact that it would have on communities. You mentioned it somewhat, but let's get a little bit more into that deal. You think about, because we got a lot of bicycle lanes here, we got kids playing in the streets and this, that, and the other. And so what happens when that happens? More money, right?
So one of the amazing things that was revealed during this Policy Advisory Committee set of 6 meetings was that today 80,000 vehicles are diverting off of our freeways and highways onto side roads. Why are they doing that? The simple answer is there's not enough capacity on the freeways for them to drive. That's where the people want to drive. They get there fast, it's point to point, it gets them where they want to go, but there's not enough capacity. So 80,000 vehicles are already clogging the Sandy Boulevards, the 82nd Avenue, the 122nd, you know, the Barber Boulevard, Interstate Avenue going north, all of those things, and they're jammed up, and those are so clogged that people are starting to spill into the neighborhoods. 80,000 vehicles. Well, one of the things that this consultant revealed was that if they toll all of I-5 and 205, starting at the border with Washington down to near Wilsonville where they meet on the southern end, an additional 50,000 cars will divert. Where are they going? They're going into our neighborhoods, into our communities, near our schools, hospitals, businesses, whatever. It's going to make a bad situation an absolute nightmare. And I mean, there's the safety aspect of that for the kids. There's the quality of life for people in the neighborhoods. I mean, how many times have you driven through a neighborhood and seen the little speed bumps there?
Oh, yeah, big time.
You know, because that's the people saying there are already too many cars now zipping through my neighborhood and it's unsafe for my kids. So city, will you put a little speed bump here to slow them down? Or put a roundabout in the middle of the intersection that will slow the cars around? So we see that all the time. And in a sense, those are symptoms of the bigger problem. There's just not enough capacity on the major freeways and on the major arterials.
And that's when you're talking about expansion. Is that what you think about expanding?
Yeah.
And other lanes and that kind of stuff. Okay.
You know, and therein lies
tolling
a great discussion in terms of the last time the Portland metropolitan area did a major expansion of capacity for cars and trucks was I-205. It opened in December 1982. And it was amazing. The plan actually was to build what I call a ring road.
Okay.
Any major city that you go to around the country or in the world has a ring road where people can avoid the crowded inner core if they don't need to go into the inner core. And Beijing, 8 ring roads around Beijing, China, you know, but every major city has it. Portland was supposed to build a western half of the ring as soon as we finished I-205, and sadly the politicians killed that, and so we don't have the needed freeway capacity to handle the cars and the trucks. Our population has doubled. Do you think the number of cars has doubled on the roads? Of course, and that's why we're roughwag the 10th worst traffic congestion in the nation, because we haven't provided the capacity for the cars and the trucks, for the goods and services that everybody wants and demands. And so from a safety standpoint, we need more roads. And I get it. There's an awful lot of people in Portland that say, well, we don't want to widen I-5. We don't want to make it easier for all these vehicles to come into the heart of downtown Portland. I can respect that. Why not build a bypass so that they can go around and don't have to? Oregon Representative Rich Vial offered a wonderful proposal 2 years ago in the Oregon legislature for a western bypass. And it was going to be expensive. I think he overshot, said $20 billion, because he knew people would poo-poo, oh, it's not enough, you're lowballing. He says, hey, major bucks. He was proposing a public-private partnership that says we can do this, we'll put tolls on it, the trucks will love it, and it'll take cars off of I-5, which is supposedly what people in the inner core want. Less cars in that inner core, and less trucks and all of that there. And so it makes absolute sense. We needed it 40 years ago, And we still need it today, and it's how do we move the conversation forward?
Well, you know, we've talked a bit about, like you said, what the problem is. And we got about 5 minutes now. Let's just talk a little bit more about the solutions. You mentioned those solutions before, but why don't you throw that back on the table in terms of solution, the solution to the problem?
Well, and like a good engineer, we all knew an awful lot of smart people in the service, and it's like, sir, what's the problem you want solved?
Yeah.
You ask an engineer, what's the problem you want solved? Hey, if you want to solve traffic congestion, they'll tell you how many lanes, where people need to go, the start and the finish. What are the biggest businesses in Oregon? Other than OHSU and government, it's Nike and Intel out in Washington County.
Yes.
Washington County Commissioner Roy Rogers told that policy advisory committee Washington County is gridlocked. He said Washington County businesses are going to stop using the Port of Portland unless they get another way to get their goods and services out of Washington County. Because right now, the second biggest choke point is the 3-lane Vista Ridge Tunnel from Highway 26, and it dumps it right in the heart of the crowded downtown Portland. They can't get anything out of there unless they're using 217 to go south. But if their stuff needs to go east or come north, they've got to go into the heart of downtown Portland to then get on 84 or I-5 north. That makes no sense.
And it's gridlock big time.
Yeah.
Almost 24 hours.
You know, and so the name of the game for me is, what's the problem do you want to solve? And is this proposed solution, will it solve it? Which swerves into, they want to spend $500 million on the Rose Quarter. You know, that's the only 2-lane choke point on I-5, its entire length in an urban area. Olympia has 4 lanes wide in each direction, and yet the city of Portland, infinitely bigger, a lot more economic powerhouse, only 2 lanes. They need it bigger or do a bypass around it. But the saddest part of that Rose Quarter piece, half of the $500 million is going to go to create real estate, to build 2 concrete lids over the top. It has nothing to do with solving congestion problems. And that tees up another discussion for some other time, my friend.
Very much so. I'm going to sneak this other one in real quick, and that was the one about the tunneling, if you will, for the steel bridge with TriMet.
Oh, there you go.
TriMet. I'm not going to go too far. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I'm going to give you 5 more minutes on that piece. Throw it out there for me.
Hey, so, you know, as always, mass transit is offered as a solution for some of the congestion problems. The reality is, in the Portland metro area, a maximum of 5% of the people will use either the TriMet buses or the light rail. I mean, you may love it, you may hate it, but the people are voting. So TriMet this summer floated 4 possible ideas. Now, they've got a lot of problems and challenges there, but their biggest one is that every single MAX light rail line has to cross the steel bridge. 117 years old. It creates a choke point. They have 1 train every 90 seconds. TriMet's saying, as the population grows, we need more ways to get trains across. So what are they proposing? They've got 4 ideas, but the most expensive one is a $2 billion tunnel from Lloyd Center to Goose Hollow, and they say it will save up to 15 minutes. How do they save the 15 minutes, my friend? This makes absolutely no sense, my friends. They're going to eliminate a dozen light rail stops between Lloyd Center and Goose Hollow. Wow. How does that serve the people?
It doesn't.
My goodness. And $2 billion, easy number. What does a mile of freeway cost? About 10 million bucks. How many miles of freeway could we build in the Portland metro area to handle the traffic congestion for $2 billion, which is what they want to spend on this tunnel if it goes forward?
Wow. And then when you start thinking about that kind of money, it's not $2 billion, it might be $4 billion, if you know what I'm saying. I hate to put it that way.
Oh, I had a TriMet staffer. I played the gray-haired old guy and said, hey, I'm just curious. I read the price tag on this was about $1 billion to $2 billion. I know you don't have it designed, but is that accurate? And this staffer got a funny look on their face and did this, i.e. the price is well above that. And that's all of our money. And to me, to you, we want the efficient use of our money, my friend. And there's the challenge: is that that's going to serve fewer people.
Wow.
You know, for $2 billion.
Wow. Well, folks, as you can see, the transportation activists. I mean, in all due respect, that's what you, the public, need to hear. You need to know that you're paying for it. It's costing you. So consequently, make sure you get very, very much involved with these proposed leaders that are saying that they would like to represent you in these various key positions. In fact, even like myself, that's exactly why I'm working it right now. I'm working. I got this guy. I know he's got that background, and he's got the kind of information. He's got is the old KISS adage too. I mean, he communicates well. Sometimes you can't get it in the media. Sometimes you read the editorial area and it's so confusing. You know, you need a translator. But hey, but in all due respect, it's very, very important that you know what the issues, the major issues are, and with all of the so-called development that we're having here in the Portland area and elsewhere for that matter, and people are moving in like flies. You know, with the weather and this, that, and the other, they all come in here aspect of it, and people's homes are being raised down. I mean, there's no low-income housing, if you will.
Yep.
There's no such animal, and then there we got well, I don't want to get into the housing, to the homeless situation at this point in time. But the fact of the matter is, we've got John here, and John's going to be back. We're going to talk about CRC as Columbia River Crossing. Columbia River Crossing. I know that if you've gone across that bridge, you know what I'm talking about. Between the hours of 11 and 11 o'clock in the afternoon, just know it's packed. It's packed all over the place. But the bottom line is that we're going to have John here, and we're going to talk about transportation big time, and we're going to educate the voters because it's affecting your pocketbook. Remember that, and make sure you ask those folks who are running for office, whether you go and see them at a meeting or a debate and whatever, you can stand up. You are the right, because you are the employer. Remember that. They are employees. You are the employer, and I respect that. Fair?
Fair enough, my friend.
Good. Well, look, thank you very much, John. This has been just great. Okay, good.
Thank you, my friend.
We'll see you next time.
Semper Fi.
Oh, Semper Fi.
Absolutely.
Well, you're a good man. And he's a vet too, by the way. He's a vet. Airline pilot, right?
Yes, sir.
Airline pilot. He flew in the. Well, you flew in which war did you fly in?
I just missed Vietnam, and I did all the small skirmishes through the late 70s and the 80s.
Is that what it was? Well, maybe that was the flight I was taking when I was going over. I replaced you. I picked it up.
There you go.
Good. Okay, good. We had John Lee here, and we want to thank him very, very much. And we're going to take a short break, and we're going to get to our next guest. Stick around. Go get your coffee, get your tea, and come back. We're going to talk about arms, guns. Okay, here in our area. Okay.
You are watching Oregon.